Yesterday, Gauteng Premier David Makhura addressed the media on findings and recommendations by the panel which reviewed the socio-economic impact of the e-tolls last year. The panel was set up following widespread opposition towards the e-tolling system. The Premier promised that the final report will be revealed not later than the end of February. Joining us is Clarke, and he is our spokesperson. John, good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Nice to be back. Thanks, Ian.
All right, so we looked at yesterday, I think, as a hope that we'd get a conclusion on what's going to happen with e-tolls, but instead we got, well, we are now going to review the process properly. So were you satisfied with what came out of yesterday?
Well, I felt a strange sense of being vindicated, because it would be a very brave prosecutor that would take anybody to court for not paying the e-toll bills, given the fact that this panel's reports come out. And because Art has been saying a lot of what's in that report, and now it's the question, we've got these 15 learned people now saying it. So from that point of view, process-wise, I'm sure a lot of people are just sick and tired of this thing. They want closure. They want to move on. It unfortunately not going to be quite so easy. And also the Gauteng provincial government doesn't formally have the powers to actually even review it. All they can do is get a group of people together, an advisory. What for me is rather ironic is that, throughout this whole process, SANRAL's been maintaining that they properly consulted with the public, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, if ever there was evidence of the fact that they have not, it's this.
Absolutely.
So from that point of view, it's good. And there's a lot of good ideas in it. And, and it's quite creative. I was just going through some of them. And we've got these gantries. What do they do with them? So you can see the difficulty. However, SANRAL says that there is a massive debt that still needs to be repaid. Well, I would want to say to SANRAL, yes, there's a massive trust deficit that needs to be recovered between this state-owned institution and the public. We're seeing the difficulties having in other state-owned institutions. It's time to try and turn things around. So from that point of view, I think we've got to be constructive. Things are too dreadful and despairing in that for us to be pessimistic.
Okay, all right. All right, now, one thing the Premier did keep referring to was this hybrid model proposal. Please explain this to me.
Well, I'm not sure I can yet, because I can see what they're trying to do is say, well, is there kind of a middle road? I think a lot of people, I get the idea that some of the panelists have got quite excited about what an intelligent transport system is in the international benchmarks of what this means. It's about congestion management, it's about sort of traffic demand. And I think they said, well, the gantries are here. The original purpose was actually, I think, quite a good one in the sense we cannot continue having the tyranny of the four-person motor vehicle driving with one person in it on a very fancy road.
Yeah.
There has to be something, that's not environmentally sustainable, that has to change.
Okay.
And so they're talking about maybe using it about having like a, high occupancy lane. So if you have four people in your car, well then you can use it. But if you only have one person driving fast in a freeway, that's not what it's about. And they're trying to say, can they use it as a way of behavioral change towards more public transport usage, etc., etc. We need to have that public transport in place
before we can do anything.
I also like the fact, as I picked up this morning, that we mustn't use e-tolls as a proxy for dealing with the regulation of the taxi industry.
Okay.
So they've delinked that. So there's a lot of constructive thing there, and the process is carrying on, and we still need to just engage. And of course, we're saying to the public, be encouraged. This is a great shot in the arm for our kind of showing that we are taking back our streets and our roads, and that as a citizens, we are asserting our right, constitutional right. I noticed right at the beginning of the report, they start with a recognition of the Bill of Rights, freedom of movement and that. So I'm rather pleased from that point of view.
So you're feeling
this hybrid thing, just to answer your
it.
question, somebody said it's a bit like, you're trying to sort of paste feathers on the wings of an albatross. It's not going to fly. We want to scrap the whole thing, and we want to go back to a more efficient thing and not have this incredibly costly overheads cost of trying to collect revenue.
He also made mention of a more affordable flat rate and other additional sources of revenue. What other sources of revenue? Perhaps the whole thing that everybody's been talking about, a fuel levy, is that one of the instances he could be referring to?
He does look at that. He looks at issues like licensing fees, etc. And I noticed that in some ways somebody, I think, I can't remember if we told them, but the New Zealand have something equivalent to SANRAL, but they call it the New Zealand Terrestrial Transport Agency. And you look at their annual report and you see how they've got different sources of revenues. I think somebody looked at that and sort of thought, well, here's an idea, of how to get different revenue streams into it. We still maintain that the fuel levy fund as the most efficient under the circumstances, and it doesn't have all the overhead costs. The fact that petrol's going down in price, well, goodness, it's only we asked for. If they had put in 10 cents a litre, right from 2006, we would have been paid off this thing long ago.
Yeah, so that would have been the most logical. And I know the licensing issue has made a lot of people already start throwing their toys and saying, no, I will just go and register my car somewhere else then. I will not register it here in Gauteng. So there's always a way of getting around it. So not going to drag on after February. That's what we've been promised.
Well, I'm not sure. I think that, there's a lot of institutional interest that have kind of got vested into this thing. And I would like to say I want to go into other things. There's so many other priorities to deal with. How can we turn this lemon into some really good lemonade? Let's get rid of the bitter taste. Let's try and sort of get some rationality. And there's, of course, an election happening in 18 months' time or so. Yeah. And I would hope that the national government now realizes they've got the hot potato in their hands. It's not going to cool down other than if they allow the fresh winds of public sentiment to cool it down with them and start getting into a relationship with the public that's constructive rather than adversarial.
Okay, John, thank you for talking to us. John Clarke is the spokesperson for Outer, their response to the review from the e-toll that was handed out, the report that was released yesterday. All right, quickly, let's take a break. We'll be back just after 7 with the news. Stay tuned.